What do billionaires, poker players, and startup founders all have in common? Well, besides being really smart, really ambitious, and, let's be honest, probably a little bit weird, they also share a common obsession: finding asymmetric bets. These are bets where the potential reward is much greater than the potential risk. In other words, they only play the game if the odds are unfair, and they make sure it's in their favor. As an example, let's look at one of the most famous asymmetric bets ever made, which actually takes us back to the beginning of the modern era of asymmetric bets. 1968. That year, a 24-year-old Stanford dropout named Bill Gross founded a company called Idealab. And this wasn't like any other company. It was an incubator for other startups. So instead of building one company, Gross would fund many companies, taking an equity stake in each one so that he could spread his risk around. This was a pretty novel idea at the time. Most tech investors didn't want to take equity in the companies they funded. They just wanted cash. But Gross figured that if he took a small equity stake in a bunch of different companies, then even if most of them failed, he'd still make money because one of them would eventually become very valuable. This strategy worked incredibly well. One of the companies that Gross funded early on was CitySearch, an early search engine that specialized in local results. And while it wasn't the first search engine, it was one of the first to turn a profit. In fact, it would go on to become the second largest search engine in the world behind Google. And in 2006, it would be sold to IAC Search and Media for $750 million. For Gross, this meant a 30x return on his initial investment. And while he lost money on some of his other bets, he made far more than he ever would have in a traditional investment firm. Now fast forward a few decades and you'll see the same pattern repeating itself over and over again. Peter Thiel made a massive bet on the internet before anyone else thought it was worth investing in. He was rewarded with billions of dollars. Warren Buffett made a massive bet on the US economy during the financial crisis. He was rewarded with billions of dollars. Ray Dalio made a massive bet on China before almost every other investor thought it was a viable option. He was rewarded with billions of dollars. Even Elon Musk is making a massive bet that electric cars and sustainable energy are the future of the automotive industry. He's already been rewarded with tens of billions of dollars and counting. Of course, not all of these people are playing the same game. Thiel and Buffett are investors. Dalio is an active manager. And Musk is a hands-on CEO. But what they all have in common is that they all know how to find asymmetric bets and then leverage them to their advantage. Now, it's important to note that just because something is an asymmetric bet does mean that it's a good one. If you don't have an informational edge, it's impossible to consistently find asymmetric bets. But once you do have that edge, it's just a matter of understanding the market and then making the right bet. For example, we've already talked about Gross's huge bet on search engines. But there were plenty of other asymmetric bets going on at the same time. Netscape was another huge asymmetric bet that turned into a massive win for its investors. Amazon was another one, and so was eBay. The key is to look for markets where the competition is either uninformed or uninterested. This is how Gross was able to get such big returns so consistently. He simply funded companies that no one else wanted, then waited for them to eventually become valuable. The best part is that this exact strategy can be replicated today by almost anyone. There are dozens of new markets that are just waiting for someone to make an asymmetric bet on them. All you have to do is find the market and then make the bet. Of course, it's not that easy, but that's why not everyone does it. The truth is that most people aren't looking for asymmetric bets. They're just looking for a safe bet. They want to bet on things that are guaranteed to happen, or at least have a very high probability of happening. But that's the wrong way to think about it. If you want to make big money, you have to take big risks. You have to be willing to go all in on something that most people think is a long shot. Because at the end of the day, that's what an asymmetric bet is. A bet that most people think is a long shot. But if you're willing to go for it, then it just might be the biggest opportunity of your life. So next time you're thinking about making a bet, ask yourself, is this an asymmetric bet? And if not, then don't waste your time. And that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.